Now, most Kenyans have opposed the directive by the Ministry of Health requiring that they possess a COVID-19 vaccination certificate before accessing government services. Those we spoke to want the government to first do more public sensitization on the effects of the vaccines before making it mandatory for everyone to get them. Here are some of the comments we got from the public.
Mimi naweza kusema serikali kitu ingefanya isilete hii kitu ghafla. Ingetupatia muda kwamba kuanzia sasa mpaka kufikia mwezi wa 3 bila kuchanjwa huduma hii upati.
Na mimi naomba serikali wafuate sheria. Kwa sababu koti ilisema hiyo directive ilipeanwa na waziri ni null and void. Hii ni democratic country. Mambo hiyo yao lazima tufuate vile koti imesema.
Mimi binafsi sijadungwa na ile masuala ya kuwa kama hujadungwa upati huduma itakuwa saizi italeta ile mtafaruku sana kwa sababu wananchi. Kwa hivyo nilikuwa naomba wananchi wahamasishwe zaidi athari zake na faida zake, ndo wakileta hiyo maneno kwa uwezi pata huduma yote ya serikali ama huduma yote kwa jamii, at least wananchi waweze kuwa na muda na kuelewa zaidi umuhimu wa hii chanjo.
Serikali isilazimishe watu kuchanjwa kwa sababu kuchanjwa hii pia inaletea watu madhara na inaweza letea mtu magonjwa. Kwa hivyo tutaki kusikia hiyo maneno kulazimisha watu.
Chanjo ni mtu mwenyewe aenda achukue chanjo. Kama mtu hataki chanjo, msitulazimishe chanjo. Mimi mwenyewe sijachanjwa, bibi yangu alienda akachanjwa last week. Ni mgonjwa mpaka saa hii haamuki. Inanigharimu tena pesa yangu nitoe kwa mfuko. Na hii pesa zilipwe na serikali.
Wakristo wetu waweze kudungwa sindano na hata waweze kufuatilia utaratibu ambao umewekwa na serikali juu ya kuzuia huu ugonjwa kueneza.
So, no jabs, no access. How enforceable is this and where does it sit in the law? Let's speak to Steve Ogola, who's an advocate of the High Court, joining us here on Citizen JK Live tonight. Steve, thank you for making the time for us. Let's begin first by talking about the fact that Justice Anthony Mirima had actually halted the implementation of this directive a couple of weeks ago. So where does this leave this directive now?
I think, Yvonne, it means that the government is going against a valid court order that has not been set aside. The moment the High Court stayed or stopped implementation or enforcement of that directive, government ought to have ceased henceforth. So to come back through the back door and purport to implement it, I've heard what they've said, you cannot approbate and reprobate mandatory vaccination. On the one hand, you're saying it's optional, it's not mandatory, but on the other hand, you're saying you won't be able to access public services. That is exactly what the court has said. It's unconstitutional. The case has to be interrogated on the merit.
And tell me, how enforceable, would a directive like this be? Consider Kenyans who will be thronging bars, restaurants, who will even be going to shopping malls and supermarkets and dukas. Do we even have the capacity to enforce this and make sure that all of them are complying with the directive, especially for many of them who would be looking to make a killing this Christmas season?
Now, we'll be going into unprecedented chaos in terms of enforceability or impracticability of this directive for two reasons. One, you've had the government has admitted we have only received 20 million doses compared to about a population of about 50 million Kenyans. So it means, in terms of availability, even if you wanted to vaccinate everyone, you don't have enough doses. In terms of practicability, can you genuinely say that you can, even with the 10 million doses that are available, that you can actually vaccinate all these people within a month? In terms of accessibility, where are the spots that people can, the vaccination points where people can go and get vaccinated? How far are they in between? So I think government is implementing this directive in a very chaotic and dubious manner, and enforcement of this directive will equally be chaotic. And of course it will fail. What is sad is that government has developed a very stable reputation for impunity. They have very little regard for court orders, because what we would have seen now is an honest admission that we have frozen the process of mandatory vaccination. You can go about your business, but we encourage you to go and access the vaccine. But they are not saying that. They are still intimidating and threatening Kenyans to get this vaccination. But to be sure, Yvonne, I don't think Kenyans are opposed to vaccination per se. What Kenyans are raising are legitimate concern deserving of attention. They are saying, listen, where are these vaccines? How are they accessible? Are they even available? And if you're rolling out a mandatory vaccination plan, is it even supported by the law? Assuming it's supported by the law, can you really implement it in a short time?
And Steve, speaking of the law, you know, the Ministry of Health officials today in, you know, announcing this directive actually invoked the Public Health Act, that apparently this is a law that gives government sweeping powers, particularly in a case like this where we have a pandemic. Is this the case? Can the Public Health Act supersede a court order or any other, perhaps some would say, you know, human rights that exist?
The short answer is no. The Constitution is very clear that all laws are subject to it, and any law that seems to contradict the Constitution will be declared null and void to the extent of that inconsistency. But if there was any doubt, a judicial pronouncement would be definitive in terms of resolving that doubt. So the court has said that you cannot roll out mandatory vaccination program. It does not then matter that you want to rely on the Public Health Act or any other statute. You cannot implement a particular act or provision of the law in a manner that contravenes or contradicts a court order.
Okay, indeed. We have to leave it there for now. Steve Ogolla, advocate of the High Court, and indeed see what happens in the coming days with respect to enforcement, compliance with this directive that's been issued. Thank you for coming and shedding some light as far as the legal questions go with respect to this directive. Steve Ogolla, advocate of the High Court, joining us there.